The conflict between the Apache and the Comanche stands out as one of the most prolonged and ferocious struggles in Native American history. These sworn enemies engaged in relentless warfare, which the Spanish and Mexicans came to describe as a war of extermination. By the late 1500s, the eastern Apache had carved out a dominant presence in the southern Great Plains, securing prime buffalo hunting grounds while also practicing agriculture, a combination that provided them with both mobility and sustenance. This semi-agrarian lifestyle diversified their diets and positioned them next to one of the most valuable food sources in North America. Meanwhile, the Comanche were in a much more precarious position. Forced into less desirable territory by stronger tribes, including the Apache, they became a marginalized and vengeful group. However, a pivotal change in the mid-1600s, ironically initiated by their greatest enemy, transformed the Comanche into one of the most formidable Native American powers in history. The Spanish conquest of Mexico in the early 1500s fueled their drive to expand further north. Armed with superior technology, metal armor, firearms, and hundreds of horses, they advanced into what is now New Mexico by 1600, quickly subjugating many indigenous groups and compelling them to adopt Christianity and serve as laborers. However, the Apache fiercely resisted. They launched violent raids on Spanish settlements, stealing horses and gradually mastering horsemanship. By the 1650s, mounted Apache raiders became a formidable threat, conducting swift and devastating attacks that left Spanish settlements, including Taos and Santa Fe, in constant fear. As the Apache perfected their mounted warfare, they inadvertently set the stage for their own downfall. During their raids, thousands of Spanish horses escaped into the wild. By the late 17th century, these mustangs spread across the Great Plains, and the Comanche seized this opportunity. Unlike other tribes, who merely used horses for transportation, the Comanche mastered breeding and raising horses, becoming unparalleled cavalry warriors. With this newfound advantage, the Comanche expanded rapidly, transforming themselves from outcasts into a dominant force. The Comanche's mastery of horseback warfare set them apart. Unlike the Apache, who dismounted to fight, the Comanche remained mounted, giving them unmatched mobility and tactical superiority. George Catlin, an artist who witnessed the Comanche firsthand, famously described them as the most extraordinary horsemen he had ever seen. Their ability to fire arrows with deadly precision while riding and their skill in using their horses as shields made them nearly invincible in battle. As full nomads, the Comanche could strike suddenly and disappear before their enemies could respond, making them a constant threat to anyone within a 400-mile radius. By the early 1700s, the tables had turned. The once dominant Apache found themselves on the defensive as the Comanche, now allied with the Utes, launched relentless attacks. Entire Apache bands were annihilated, and those who survived were forced to retreat into the mountains or seek protection from the Spanish. In a desperate bid for survival, the Apache sought peace with the Spanish in 1749, even requesting that missions and presidios be established in their territory. This move, however, was not purely an act of submission. The Apache intended to use the Spanish as a buffer against the Comanche. In 1757, the Spanish established a mission and presidio at San Saba, hoping to protect their new Apache allies and convert them to Christianity. However, the Apache had other motives. They deliberately provoked the Comanche by raiding their territory and leaving behind Spanish artifacts to suggest that the Spanish were complicit. This deception worked. In 1758, a large Comanche war party descended on San Saba, massacring the inhabitants and burning the mission to the ground. The Spanish response, a punitive expedition led by Colonel Diego Ortiz Parilla, ended in disaster. The Comanche outmaneuvered and overwhelmed the Spanish force, forcing a humiliating retreat. Despite their military setbacks, the Spanish eventually adapted their strategy. In the 1780s, Don Juan Bautista de Anza, a seasoned Spanish officer, launched a series of successful campaigns against the Comanche. Using tactics similar to those of his enemies, Anza managed to inflict significant losses and opened negotiations with the Comanche. By 1785, a historic peace agreement was reached. The Comanche agreed to cease hostilities, establish trade relations, and, crucially, join the Spanish in campaigns against the Apache. This alliance proved devastating for the Apache. In 1790, a combined force of Spanish soldiers and Comanche warriors trapped and annihilated a large band of Lipan Apache near San Antonio. The few surviving Apache bands retreated into the mountains, effectively ending their presence on the plains. With the Apache subdued, the Comanche solidified their dominance over the Great Plains, while the Spanish enjoyed a temporary respite from indigenous raids. However, the story did not end there. Although the Comanche emerged victorious on the plains, the rugged terrain offered the Apache a sanctuary where they could continue to resist. In these harsh environments, the Apache adapted once again, becoming fierce guerrilla fighters who would later challenge both Mexican and American forces. Their resilience ensured that, while they lost the plains, they would not be forgotten. This epic struggle between the Apache and Comanche highlights the brutal and complex nature of Native American warfare and the ever-shifting alliances and rivalries that defined the era. It serves as a testament to the adaptability and determination of both peoples, whose legacies continue to shape the history of the American Southwest. By the late 18th century, the Spanish found themselves at an impasse. The Apache, driven into the arid borderlands, resumed their raids with a renewed ferocity. Settlements in Texas and northern Mexico faced near-constant attacks, prompting Spanish officials to consider a new, more drastic strategy, a war of extermination. However, before such plans could be fully realized, the Comanche-Spanish alliance shifted the balance of power once again. One of the most significant turning points came in January 1790, when General Juan de Ugalde led a coalition of Spanish, Comanche, and Wichita forces against a large Lipan Apache encampment west of San Antonio. The battle ended in a decisive victory for the coalition, with hundreds of Apache warriors killed and many more captured. The Lipan Apache, once a dominant force on the plains, were left with fewer than 1,000 warriors. In the aftermath, they abandoned their remaining territories and retreated into the mountains, effectively ending their presence as a major power. The Comanche, now unchallenged on the plains, enjoyed a period of relative peace and prosperity. They controlled vast territories, dominated trade networks, and continued to refine their equestrian skills. For the Spanish, the temporary cessation of hostilities allowed them to consolidate their settlements and expand their influence in the region. However, this peace was fragile. The rise of new powers, including the nascent United States, would soon introduce new challenges and conflicts. In the decades that followed, the Comanche faced increasing pressure from American settlers and military forces. Despite their initial successes in resisting American expansion, the Comanche ultimately succumbed to the same fate as many other Native American tribes. By the late 19th century, they were confined to reservations, their once mighty empire reduced to a shadow of its former self. The Apache, on the other hand, continued to resist. In the mountainous regions of the Southwest, they waged a prolonged guerrilla war against both Mexican and American forces. Leaders such as Geronimo and Cochise became symbols of Apache resistance, their exploits earning them a place in history as some of the fiercest and most determined warriors of the American frontier. The legacy of the Apache-Comanche conflict is a testament to the resilience and adaptability of Native American cultures. Despite facing overwhelming odds, both tribes endured, leaving an indelible mark on the history of the American West. Their stories remind us of the complex and often brutal realities of frontier life, and the enduring spirit of those who fought to protect their way of life in an ever-changing world.